Introduction. The Battle of the Atlantic is a series of clashes between the Allied fleet and German submarines. It was conducted mainly on sea lanes in the Atlantic Ocean and went without interruption from the first day of the war to the last. So on September 3, 1939, the U-30 submarine commander, Fritz Julius Lemp, sank the Athenia British passenger liner, and on May 7, 1945, the Royal Air Force bombers off the western coast of Norway sent the U-320 submarine to the bottom. Between these events, German boats sank about 2,800. Allied merchant ships with a total displacement of about 14 million tons. Nicholas Monserrat wrote, "Until the Germans were defeated, they enthusiastically yearned for world domination. Wholeheartedly loyal to monstrous tyranny, which, if it had not been destroyed, would deprive humanity of its freedom for many generations. And the worst of the voluntary servants of world slavery fought on German submarines." Half the world agrees with this harsh statement. However, German submariners cannot be taken so unambiguously. And therefore it is not surprising that today there are different opinions about the German submarine fleet. Some people look at German submariners as heroes. Others consider them modern pirates. Today, 75 years after the submarine sank the last merchant ship, the prevailing opinion was that the submariners had to do the dirty work, but they did it well. British Commander First Rank Richard Compton-Hull writes, "Any war is a murder. That is its essence." And the submariners especially succeeded in destruction and, as an inevitable consequence, in death. The Germans, who lost both world wars, saw that rare violations of maritime laws by their submariners were identified and punished, whereas the victorious Allies did not even look for their violations. However, the conviction that there is a significant difference between the actions of German submariners and submariners of the Allied fleets is completely untenable and unfair. The most successful and probably the most famous submariner of World War II was Otto Kretschmer, who for 18 months sank Allied transports with a total displacement of more than 250,000 tons. Following him is Captain First Rank Wolfgang Lutt. He managed to sink about 50 ships with a displacement of 230,000 tons. During the war, Lutt made 16 campaigns in 4 boats, and his last campaign lasted 203 days. He was one of 2 Kriegsmarine officers to receive the Reich's highest courage award, the Knight's Cross with Diamonds. Lutt became the head of the German Naval Academy at the age of 30. He became the youngest captain of the first rank in the German Navy. Wolfgang Lutt was doing his dirty work well. But, strictly speaking, once he did his job well, and once, not really. Behind the impressive numbers of military achievements stood a mysterious and controversial figure. This person combined many advantages and many disadvantages. He became the personification of the paradoxical career of many submarine commanders, who were put forward by the fascist regime, and to which they served faithfully. I want to warn you, you may not like my talk about Lutt. He was a fascist. He stated this loudly and often. At times he was scrupulous and petty, sometimes even cruel. His best friend, who served with him, even stated once that Lutt had no idea about pity. Therefore, he was completely not interested in the fate of the crew of the sunken ship. Lutt had one wonderful quality. Not courage, not brilliance, more, he cared for his people. He watched them as a strict but friendly father of a German family. And his concern was not limited to the time of service on the boat. From the moment a sailor arrived aboard the ship until the last day of the war. Wherever he was, no matter what he did, whatever he did, the sailor always remained under the supervision and care of Captain Wolfgang Lutt. The result is a contradictory combination of virtues and notoriety, which is unlikely to change my series. History has not decided for itself exactly who Wolfgang Lutt was, good or bad, a hero or a villain. And indeed, whether he deserves mention on the tablets. Yes, I guess. And then, decide for yourself. Prologue. Good afternoon. My name is Anton Worrell van Herwarden, Submarine Commander U-27. I am a collective image of a submarine officer Kriegsmarine from the Second World War. Much of my fate will be based on the biography of the second most successful submariner, Kriegsmarine Wolfgang Lutt, who is little known outside of Germany. And not surprisingly, Lutt did not build up his account in the harsh waters of the North Atlantic, but much more south, dealing with an adversary who was not very capable of resisting. And a very significant part of his victims were neutral vessels. That is, his skill from the amount of sunk tonnage is completely not obvious. Nevertheless, the American naval officer Jordan Voss does not hide his sympathy for the fascist submariner, painting his exploits sometimes in such a holy leaf style that he does not notice many gross mistakes made on the topic. However, I want to somewhat open up the picture of the war for the tonnage, which was carried out by German submariners at the remote theaters of World War II, and therefore represents a certain informational value for us. I believe that this story will be of interest to lovers of military history, and not only them. I will try to tell you a rather interesting and colorful story, although not without some small factual errors. About Wolfgang Lutt, one of the 2 submariners who received the highest Hitler Reich Award Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords and diamonds, but little known outside of Germany. Although Lute is in 2nd place in the list of the best aces submariners, his name is practically unknown. At best this is the line from the table. Much more famous is the Trinity Prion, Skipka, Kretschmer. Somehow, it turned out that the greatest interest was caused by those submariners who accounted for large warships. Although the main successes were in German boats in the fight against the British merchant fleet, an incredible set of legends has been composed about Prin's breakthrough in Scapa Flow. And almost no one remembers that he was the 4th ace in terms of performance. However, we'll think about whether the destruction of the old Royal Oak battleship greatly changed the situation at sea, or the sinking of 30 merchant ships was a much bigger blow for the British. I still think that the first loss was nothing more than a clear slap in the face, but the second was a painful blow. For example, few people know that on the account of the liner commander, U-331 Baron von Tiesenhausen, in addition to the battleship Bærum, there are only 2 merchant ships. That is, he was a rather nasty submariner, who was once lucky. And there are quite a few such commanders in the German fleet. But the names of Erich Topp, Heinrich Lehmann Wallenbrock, Herbert Schulz, who occupy the first lines in the list of kings of tonnage, do not say anything to anyone. The most controversial figure in this regard is Captain Lieutenant Albrecht Brandy, the 2nd diamonds holder. Although he sank a couple of small warships, on his account there are only 12 transports with a total displacement of 31,689 tons. That is, he did not reach the figure necessary to award even the Knight's Cross, not that diamonds. Moreover, he received his diamonds, having already ridden off to shore due to illness and taking the post of commander of submarines in the eastern Baltic, where the Germans in the autumn of 1944 did not have, and simply could not have any success. When reading books about submarine warfare, I often have a question about the reliability of the apporta of the commanders of German boats. Should not break into the open gate and prove, then these reports are at odds with the truth. Then an axiom that does not require proof. It is another matter that most often such discrepancies are not too great. As a rule, they do not exceed 20%. Another number of neutral vessels heated by German submarines was much more curious. For example, in Lut, the neutral tonnage leaves almost a quarter of the total figure. Moreover, in many cases he deliberately drowned a neutral vessel. The most revealing in this regard is the case of the Swedish steamer Sicily. I hope that you will be most interested in the final series, where I will try to reconstruct the death of Wolfgang Lut. There is something mystical about her. Probably, the death of the Cavalier of the highest military award of the Reich a week after the surrender of Germany can be considered symbolic. This once again proves that in real history plots can happen no less spectacular than in the novels by Alexander Dumas. Chapter 1. We, people of the Lut generation, had to live 2 lives. In our first life, we were careless and desperate. After a crushing fall, similar to the fall of Icarus, we became closed, clutched, and confused. We survived the fall, but must share responsibility for it. We are still trying to understand why this happened. Lute, like the knight Parsifal, died very young. But his behavior and merit earned him respect, his sailors and the recognition of the whole world. Like Parsifal, he lived in harmony with his moral principles, norms and rules of behavior that dictated his social and political environment. Loyalty, courage, honor, country were the pillars of his life. Myths around these concepts, starting with the Iliad and the Nibelung sagas and ending with Rilke's cornet. These words were embodied in a hero who fought for them, risking his life, who was mistaken and suffering, but retained his faith. It was Parsifal, a knight and a hero. Lute was not a knight who descended from the engravings of Dürer accompanied by death and Satan. He did not see the evil embodied in the political system of Germany, for which he lived and risked his life. Her crazy pride, perverted virtues, and values. He did not see that most of the traditional values were a thing of the past and perished. He didn't see that his country was taking a dubious path, and her future is foggy, just like his own. Similarly, on many of the ideas that he spoke and wrote about, especially regarding command issues, lies the seal of circumstances. The spirit of the times is visible in them. Lute's leadership style was shaped by circumstances, which can in no way be called typical of submarine warfare. His long trips to distant seas took me 2 to 7 months. A monotonous routine reigned aboard the boat. He achieved great, but relatively easy successes. His experience was very different from the experience of commanders who fought in terrible battles raging in the North Atlantic, where the average lifespan of a submariner did not exceed 4 months. This style, articulated by Lute in his lecture, Problems of Leadership, harmoniously fit into the political system. Therefore, the lecture received the status of ideological leadership. Its weight is almost equal to the Code of Honor at the German Naval Academy, whose chief Lute became. Since we know the political realities of that time, we have the right to ask ourselves, is it possible to perceive his words today as they did then? It turns out about the same as when you try to look into a kaleidoscope. When a colorful moving mosaic shimmers before your eyes. Colorful pebbles are the main virtues of Lut. His mind, modesty, courage, justice. But when the kaleidoscope turns, a different picture appears before the eyes. The pebbles are the same, but they make a completely different impression. The surrounding background has changed, and the picture has changed. Humanity has always lived in anticipation of the apocalypse, the doomsday. Many-headed monsters of the Earth's bowels and deeps have long been torn out. But the bridle of nuclear energy dragged them very close. Instead of Parsifal, the ideal knight, we have a logic, a pure thinker, who must lead his people calmly and smartly, while maintaining composure. From the experience of my acquaintance with Wolfgang Lut, man from the Baltic states and the Prussia, and therefore a belligerent man, albeit disciplined, I can conclude that he would go this way, if fate were more favorable to him and he survived. I was born on the 25th of June, 1913 years in Riga, in the family of Augustus Varl von Herwarden. During the war, I lived with my mother and 4 other children in Breslau, while my father was exiled to Siberia. At 1921 we returned to Riga. There I studied and graduated from German high school. At the beginning of 1933, I joined the German Navy. At the end of 1936, I was awarded the rank of fleet lieutenant. And in 1937, I was transferred to submarines as a watch officer. I was the 4th and youngest son of Augustus and Margareta Varl von Herwarden. My father was a small entrepreneur and owned a small factory manufacturing fine knitwear. My grandfather Friedrich, by whose name the company was named, moved east from Lübeck in the middle of the 19th century and founded the business. Among the customers of my father was the Russian Imperial Army. Nevertheless, he was exiled to Siberia, and our family was sent to Breslau for 7 years. Since returning in 1921 year, and until the day I entered the Navy in 1933, I lived in Riga. In 1927, I graduated from a local gymnasium. And in 1929 year he received a certificate of maturity, the equivalent of a high school diploma. In 1931 year he entered to the prestigious Gottfried Herder Institute for a major in law. I seemed to be waiting for a successful career. But on April 1, 1933, just 2 months after Adolf Hitler became Reich Chancellor of Germany, I drop out of college and enlist in the Reichsmarine. Early spring morning in the North Atlantic. It's too dark, and nothing is visible except the sea and the clouds. The smooth black surface gleams a little, reflecting the faded moon. Through tattered grey clouds rare stars can be seen. And most importantly, it's cold, damn cold. U-27 left the port 4 days ago. 4 observers, yawning, carefully inspect the horizon. They are tired and wet, but the shift is not over yet. They have no time to admire the beauties of the night sea, they are required to notice the ship on time. And in the sky, observers are not interested in clouds and birds, but in enemy bombers. In 1941 year, a vast battle unfolded in the Atlantic. They were hunters, but at the same time they were also game.
I haven't seen a night this quiet in a long time. Such stillness, such peace. As if the troubles of the world don't make waves out here. And yet it's just the quiet before the storm. We are at war, number 1. The invasion of Poland has begun. It appears that our Führer gets to rewrite history after all. And we are caught right in the middle of it.
Hey! Schiff voraus! 2 Uhr! Läuft nach Westen!
And so it begins. Sound the alarm. All men to action stations. Let the hunting commence.
Ziel erfasst. los! Rohr, los!
Halbe Fahrt voraus.
Schiff in Sicht. Kurs 3, 5.
Langsame Fahrt voraus. Kleine Fahrt voraus. Maschinen stopp.
Schiff in Sicht. Kurs 2, 5.
Neues Ziel wird erfasst. Rohr, los! Neues Ziel wird erfasst. Ziel erfasst. Rohr, los! Neues Ziel wird erfasst. Rohr, los! Ziel erfasst. Rohr bereit. Rohr, los! Neues Ziel wird erfasst. Torpedotreffer. Rohr, los! Ziel erfasst. Rohr, los! Torpedotreffer. Torpedolaufzeit beträgt
9.
Sekunden. Torpedo hat das Ziel verfehlt. Rohr, los! Torpedotreffer! Torpedotreffer! Torpedotreffer!
Halbe Fahrt voraus.
Nimm Kurs wieder auf. Neuer Wegpunkt. Kurs 139.
Don't let any of this fool you, number one. If we were to go up against the English tomorrow, we'd be outnumbered 8-1. The Führer is crazy to believe that a few U-boats can take it up with the Royal Navy. But of course, it is only my opinion. After you.
Welcome, gentlemen, and congratulations on a successful patrol. I say the war is off to a good start. Yes? Well, it certainly is for you, Captain. I have direct orders from the BDU to assign you to U-122.
But what about my boat and my crew?
They will receive a new captain. Herr Lieutenant, you are hereby promoted to captain of U-27 and are to take command immediately. A second in command has already been assigned to you. He will be waiting for you by the boat. Now, please, gentlemen, if you will excuse me, come back later for your mission briefings. I have an urgent call with Naval High Command.
So, Captain, war changes everything, doesn't it? Let this be my last piece of advice to you. Never let it change you. We are soldiers. We fight, we destroy, we even kill. But we do it with honor and respect for our enemy. Never forget that. Be good to my crew. They were the best I ever had.
And so I finally became the commander of the U-27 submarine. But the true is what the war began, and there is no particular reason to rejoice. I must not forget to go to headquarters for an order. Probably the old man has already finished his conversation with Doenitz. It is interesting to me to know that the headquarters and the commander prepared for me.
Ich grüße Sie, mein Freund. Kommen Sie herein, Herr Cologne. Ich habe soeben neue Befehle vom UKM erhalten. Unsere Situation hat sich leider zum Schlechten gewendet. Sehen Sie, nach unserer Invasion Polens haben uns England und Frankreich den Krieg erklärt. Damit hat Berlin nicht gerechnet. Und das bedeutet, dass wir der mächtigsten Flotte der Welt gegenüberstehen, der Royal Navy. Ein ungleiches Duell, wenn man überhaupt von Duell sprechen kann. Die englische Flotte zählt 255 Kriegsschiffe, unsere bloß 34. Das heißt, wir haben nur eine einzige Hoffnung, unsere U-Boote. Unsere Feinde zwingen unsere Schlachtschiffe mit einer Seeblockade dazu, im Hafen zu bleiben oder die direkte Konfrontation zu suchen. Eine Situation, die wir uns derzeit keinesfalls leisten können. Nur mit kleineren Einheiten wie unseren U-Booten können wir die Blockade umgehen und auf die offene See durchbrechen. Wir haben zurzeit 46 U-Boote, davon sind 22 gefechtsbereit. Sie werden eines davon übernehmen. Machen Sie das Beste daraus. Unser strategisches Gesamtziel, wie Kommodore Dönitz es bereits erläutert hat, besteht darin, Englands Abhängigkeit von importierten Gütern auszunutzen, indem wir ohne direkte Konfrontation zuschlagen, alle Nachschublinien kappen und die Einwohner aushungern, bis der König... Ihr vorläufiges Ziel besteht darin, die wichtigsten Nachschublinien entlang der englischen Küste anzugreifen und größtmöglichen Schaden anzurichten. Konzentrieren Sie Ihre Angriffe in erster Linie auf ungeschützte Geleitzüge und Frachter. Damit durchtrennen wir die Nachschubadern des Feinds, bremsen die Produktion seiner Werften aus und reduzieren so seinen gesamten Schiffsraum. Schicken wir die Tommys zur Hölle, ohne dass sie eine Ahnung haben. Gute Jagd, Herr Kommandant.
It was good for me that my personal life was developing quite successfully. Earlier, on September 25, 1938, during a vacation, I married Ilse Lurch. Who lived in Sassnitz on the island of Rügen. She was 24 years old and her father was Otto Lurch, captain of the ferry on the Sassnitz-Trelleborg line. Nilsa and I moved to a residential complex for sailors in Neustadt, where submarine officers and their families lived. After 11 months in Kiel on August 30th, 1939, we had our first child, daughter Giza. We can safely say that marriage and children, of which we had 4, became for me the most significant, simply sacred part of my life. Even more significant than receiving an officer rank than all awards and sunken vessels. More sacred than the post of commander and even the oath itself. With the ardor of a true missionary, I read sermons about the values of family and marriage literally to everyone and everyone. Anytime and anywhere, in the sea and on land, as a joke and with murderous seriousness. Marriage was for me the only normal state of a man. Sometimes at night I go up to the bridge, light a cigar and start talking about the benefits of marriage. And at this time, the boat could rush headlong behind the North Atlantic convoy, or slowly go the Strait of Madagascar 6,000 miles from their native shores. My ardor could not but leave an imprint on my relationship with the crew. Among the sailors there were husbands and fathers, and they became the target. I advised them to keep marital fidelity, write home more often, buy gifts for their wives and stay away from women while staying at the port. Married officers were even worse. I literally followed them on the heels during the dismissal to the shore to make sure that they behaved well. One of the officers recalled, "We always walked together. And in some places that we visited, you could meet pretty women. But Anton always looked that we limited ourselves to drinking, and did not give free rein to hands." I pushed singles to marry as quickly as possible. And not only because marriage was the ideal state of a man, but also because I believed that married sailors serve better. However, the sailors perceived the marital convictions as pressure, and it is natural that some began to resist. Once in Stettin at a party that I arranged for the crew of my boat, I went around all the tables, asking the couple if they were married, and if not, why. One of the sailors courageously replied, "And what difference does it make unless we get a prenuptial agreement?" According to Peterson, it shocked me then. If marriage was a good thing, then fatherhood was even better. Those team members who managed to become fathers were strongly encouraged by me. During special holidays, such as Father's Day, they were honored. I did my best to help a sailor with a family, regardless of whether he serves in my crew or has already been transferred to another boat. After I was finally brought ashore at the end of 1943, one of my former sailors wrote to me that his wife was expecting a second child, and they could not find suitable housing. Then I personally made sure that the wife of the sailor moved to a larger apartment. The husband did not even suspect this, until in 1948 year he was released from the internment camp and first saw his 3-year-old son. The end of the first series.